Hello and welcome to the TechGig podcast. I'm your host Sukriti Adhivanshi, and I am back with another podcast episode today. Folks, we today we're going to talk about leveraging artificial intelligence or AI in content creation. AI as a technology has capabilities to analyze large quantities of data and make recommendation as to what should be written for a certain topic or a certain content. In current times, AI is being looked at as an alternative to create content. For example, if you're trying to write an email, if you're trying to write a document, it gives you a suggestion. So that to a larger scale, and that can be, you cannot even imagine on what level this AI is being used behind all these processes. And such a lateral shift needs to be handled with caution and needs to be carefully implemented, taking into the account the repercussions or the impact on the future will hold in such a scenario. And AI tech for content is an interesting juncture today, not only in terms of content being created at a lightning speed, but also actions like summarization, paraphrasing, etc. are happening with much more accuracy than ever before. And to talk about various aspects that involves using AI in the content generation domain, I am here today conversating with our guest Saurabh Wadhawan, co-founder of Scalenut. Hi Saurabh, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sukriti. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here talking about AI and content creation. It has been my favorite topic for the last few years now.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Saurabh, and thank you for having giving us time to be on this show. I will quickly jump to the questions now. My first question is, what is meant by AI in content creation? The basics, Saurabh.
Cool. Content creation, if you look at it and if you dissect it, can be taken into two accounts. One is the creative side of it, and then there's the science side of it. Let me talk about both of them. The creative side is creation, writing of the content, while science side of it is more to do with what to write about, how to write about it, what sort of content to write about, and how do you promote that content. So that's the science. And nowadays, as digital is catching up, and every company is trying to be a digital company, it just makes more sense to invest slightly more in the science side of things than the creative side of things. But yeah, combined both is content creation, and that is what is super relevant for the industries nowadays.
And sort of what does it mean for content creators? I mean, should they be scared because people are being apprehensive about it in terms of jobs, right? So
Yeah,
just
yeah.
give us some light onto that. Yeah.
Yeah, let's quickly talk about first, content creation, and then I missed the part where you talked about AI in content creation. Let me just talk about first AI in content creation, and then we go ahead and talk about what it means for content creators. So, as I mentioned, content creation. Let's go deeper into the science side of it. Uh, Nowadays, there's absurd amount of content being created for any and every topic. It becomes really, really important. What do you search for? What do you write for? And how do you promote it? Now, what it effectively means is human research is becoming less and less important, and there is more computation required to figure out, what to write about. Now, that's one side of the AI. The second side of AI is creation aspect. Creation is how are people writing content? Uh, is it just a manual writing, or is it assisted by technology? Uh, AI comes in picture when it is assisting human beings on, okay, this is what we should write about, and in some cases they're writing in place of human writers. So what is happening is there is a lateral shift here, as you mentioned earlier, where it is technology driving the humans and not the other way around. Coming to the point where you're asking about, if you should be scared about AI, and if human writers, should be wary of how AI is progressing in this field. The right answer is both yes and no. You know, let me dig into it. Yes, because if you are not using AI, you are losing out on that edge. AI helps increase your efficiency by almost 8 to 10 times. As an example, a good content creator would take about 2 to 3 days to write, content which is, let's say, 1500 words, which is going to be published on the internet, which is going to drive traffic for the relevant website. Using AI, you could probably do it in 2 hours, and you could probably create much more content, much more useful content. No, because AI is not at that juncture where it can just completely replace human beings. Had that been the case, every company in the world, every content writer in the world would be at a level playing field. And that's not right for the competition. And fortunately or unfortunately, content writing is all about competition. Everybody is trying to rank for that first page of Google search results for a particular keyword. So where does that competitive advantage come in when everybody is using the same technology? So that's again where the humans come into the picture. Does that make sense, Sukriti?
Saurabh, you very well spoke about, cutting down the time size of, the entire content writing. So, for example, an article that you said should actually turn around in 4 days or 4, 5, like 3 days, whatsoever the writer may take. And the AI would come back to you in 2 hours. Now, help me understand that does this mean that we will have the same level or a higher level, when we talk about the quality of the content? Do you think that it can actually deliver content to the level where human beings can actually think upon both emotionally and in terms of understanding? Don't you think that AI would be mechanical in terms of making people understand or interpret something in that manner?
See, it depends on how you are using AI. If you're trying to use AI to replace human creators, this will never happen. AI is not at that point and probably will not be at that point for the next few years where it can completely replace human writers. But if you use this AI technology as an assistant, right, it helps you with removing the writer's block, the creative block, right? It helps you assisting writing content faster. But then the research aspect is being carried out by human creators. Yes, you can actually get the same or probably higher levels of engagement in that 2-hour piece, which has been enabled by AI, as compared to a 2-day piece, which is just being written by humans without any technology intervention.
Okay, makes sense. Now, tell me, what do we have in store in terms of the future prospects of AI in content creation, Saurabh?
Right. See, the AI is great. There has been tremendous growth in terms of what sort of technology exists in the current day in terms of AI for content writing specifically. But what it right now in its current state does is it churns out, a few sentences in one go, at best a paragraph. It's not able to comprehend a topic and write an article in one go, right? What probably you could expect in the coming times is that this thing is going to improve. It's going to understand the context more deeply to write larger pieces of content. So, for example, if you have to write a blog today, what you would do is you'd use AI and keep on plugging more and more information, manually, and then eventually it will take about 2 to 3 hours to write this article that I was talking about, right? The technology is going to grow in that space where that 2 hours is also going to now reduce to probably 30 minutes or even less. That's one aspect of it. The second aspect when it comes to future is that this AI right now helps you with the creative side of things, but it doesn't understand facts and figures. It doesn't understand things like empathy, which is very important. It doesn't understand things like, keeping specific to a particular tone when you're writing, right? For example, it might not understand what the recent cricket series or, the soccer series is going and what are the current trends. It will help you write content, but it will not be fact checked. So probably what in the next few years you could expect is that when the content being churned out of AI is being looked at, it is also fact checked. Right now you need human intervention. So those are like two aspects where I believe the baseline technology is going to change, evolve. And then there are like other aspects where, for example, right now AI is being used to create content, right? Uh, how do you repurpose that content? That's another aspect, and that's really important in today's world. For example, when you write an article, you'll want a tweet thread out of it. You'll want an infographic out of it. You will probably want to send out emailers to your customer base. How does the AI help to repurpose the content as well? So that's another aspect which is going to evolve on top of the baseline technology. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it does. And thank you for that explanation, Saurabh. I will now move to some best, practices or tips you can suggest our audience in terms of, using the entire AI in content creation.
Right. The first and foremost thing, Sukriti, here is use all the tools available to you for the research aspect. I go back to where I started. Content creation is science and the creative part, right? So the science for the research. Use all the AI tools to understand what you should be writing about, how you should be writing about, and what exactly to write. By what I mean the format. In today's world, when you see the consumption happening on multiple platforms, you're using Facebook, you're using Twitter, you're using medium-like platforms where you consume long-form content. There are subscriptions from content creators happening. It is very important to understand what do you write. How to write is more to do with what should be the content length, what should be the tonality and things like that. And what to write exactly about is, okay, these are the topics I should write about. For example, I am a tea company, right? I produce tea of various nature. What should I write about? Should I write about health benefits of tea, green tea, health benefits of green tea, or should I talk about comparison between coffee and tea? What is going to get me more traffic? Uh, that's the first thing, use AI tools at your disposal for research. The second thing, which is very important, is use AI to improve the efficiency in the creative side of things. Uh, what exactly that means is, don't just go and write by yourself. Use all the available tools to increase efficiency. Don't spend those 2 to 3 days, on just writing when you could probably do it much quicker in 2 hours and probably do, 2 to 3 versions of the same piece using these AI tools. There's a lot of these tools, so Scalenut is one of them, but there are like multiple tools on the platform, on the available market, which you could use. So the second advice is use these tools to increase efficiency of your content writing. And then the third thing, which as a tip I advise to everybody, is use tools like plagiarism checker, formatters, to polish your content and ensure that it is the right thing which will eventually go out. So for web content, for example, plagiarism is like a very important step. You do not want, even a 5% plagiarism with some other competitor of yours. And especially when you're using AI tools, the chances get higher. Although AI is at a stage where it always creates unique content, but at the end of the day, it's just technology. So it's always good to, have a foolproof system, have these plagiarism checkers in place. So I think, and plagiarism is another way of looking at AI, right? So one, research using AI. Two is creation assistance using AI. And third is ensuring your content is unique. So that's again plagiarism AI, which you should be using. So that's like three things which I would recommend to everybody who's creating content using AI.
Thanks, Saurabh. That's indeed very, very helpful. We'll now move to the evolution of AI. So AI has been a very integral part in terms of any technology that we see, right? Anything that we are looking around has AI, let's just say. It's like an omnipresent element, I should say. So tell me about it, that how it has evolved in the past couple of years altogether, especially I think when we hit the pandemic.
Yeah. So if I go back to the time frame of, let's say, 2017, 18, and somebody had told me that you could write a blog using AI and it could be written in an hour or so. Uh, to me, it would have been more like a Matrix movie, right? Okay, this is something which is just hypothetical, might not happen. But since then, technology, specifically this technology by the name of GPT-3, uh, this came out, and what it did, and it was the third version, as the name suggests, GPT-3. So there's GPT, then there was GPT-2, and then eventually 2019, late 2019, we came to a point where we got access to this technology, which could just understand the context just through couple of sentences, understand, and start writing ahead in the English language. It could just pick the context, what you're writing about, what's the topic, what sort of content is required. Obviously, there are a lot of configurations in the backend, but what happens is it starts flowing content, right? So that's what happened. That happened in late 2019, and since then, what has happened is that using that as a baseline technology, several tools have come in play. What they are essentially doing is they are increasing the efficiency of all sorts of content creators nowadays. And you would see, these amazing tools and, people, across industries, across even departments using these. So while a sales guy would use it to write their own emails, which they're sending to their corresponding leads, to marketing folks creating content, and then eventually also being used by internal communications department. Everybody, is trying to use one way or the other way. The technology has gone one next step, and even now people are able to write code, the programming stuff, using this sort of AI. So I'll not go there because we are specifically talking about content creation here. But yeah, the technology in the last 3-4 years has got to a point where you can just use it as your assistant. So instead of having a human assistant, I would rather have a tech-enabled AI assistant.
Wonderful. Now, this is the last one, Saurabh. So we spoke about the entire tech aspect and how it's evolving. Tell me, what's in it for the developers and AI experts in this domain? I mean, what avenues they can look at, what career opportunities they can look at, what all are the requirements that the market is actually looking for?
Right. The most important thing, I'll cover that the first, is how do you mix this content writing and fact checking? Right now, the AI, as I mentioned, writes content which is just plain vanilla content. It has some facts, but they're not true facts. It will just cook up the